The cowboy had not expected that one choice, one made in the fading red hush of a desert sunset, would alter the direction of his entire life. Yet as he trudged beside the weary Apache girls slumped across his only horse, he felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. Sometimes fate demanded a man act long before he understood the cost. He'd found her just before dusk, collapsed near a dry creek bed. Her clothing was torn, her breath shallow, her skin dust-coated and trembling. Nearby lay her horse, long dead, an arrow lodged deep into its flank. Trouble had found her somewhere far from here, of that he was sure. He lived alone on a modest ranch a day's walk away, with little more than the land, a shack, and the horse he regarded as a brother. But when he saw her, he did not hesitate. He lifted her gently, set her across his horse, and began the long walk toward safer ground. She had murmured only one word before slipping back into unconsciousness. "Nalin." He repeated it under his breath as he walked through the growing dark, as though the name itself were a guiding lantern. The night moved slowly. His boots sank into soft dust, while his horse took careful steps beneath the fragile weight of the girl. As the quiet valley stretched ahead, his mind churned. Who had ambushed her? Why was she so far from her people? And who would come looking? He knew only this. Returning her was the choice any decent man would make, even if it meant giving up the last thing he truly owned. As the sky bled from black to blue, he neared the outer edges of Apache land. Most men avoided these ridges entirely. Rumors painted them as places a white man entered only once. But he had never believed fear to be a map one should follow. Instead, he walked calmly, shoulders square, showing empty hands. He came with no threat, only a life he hoped to save. Just as dawn sharpened the shape of the cliffs, the silence broke. Brush shifted. Shadows moved. Warriors emerged from all sides, bows drawn, faces carved from suspicion and grief. The cowboy raised a slow hand, urging calm. Then he stepped aside, revealing the unconscious girl breathing weakly atop the horse. Recognition struck the warriors like a spark to dry grass. They rushed forward, not in violence but in desperate relief. For Nalin was not just one of their own. She was the daughter of their chief. The chief arrived moments later, tall and imposing, his gaze layered with fear, anger, and gratitude. He lifted his daughter carefully, whispering soft words in their language, words powerful enough to make his warriors lower their weapons. Then he turned to the cowboy and asked how he had found her. The cowboy told the truth. He had seen someone in need and had done only what honor required. The chief studied him for a long, quiet moment. Then his eyes drifted to the cowboy's horse, dust-covered, exhausted, yet standing proud after carrying Nalin through the night. A horse, the chief knew, was a man's livelihood, his partner, his survival. To give it up freely was an act that echoed louder than any spoken oath. The warriors withdrew, forming a respectful circle. The chief placed a hand over his heart, a rare gesture offered only to those who acted with unshakable integrity. The cowboy nodded, not seeking praise, only asking whether the girl would live. When the healers confirmed she would recover, his heart eased. Yet another weight took its place. His horse was gone. Without it, he could not plow, herd, or even return home before nightfall. But regret never crossed his thoughts. A man was measured not by what he held on to, but by what he was willing to give away. The warriors led him to a clearing outside their camp to rest, promising safety through the night. He expected nothing more. At sunrise, he planned to begin the long walk home. But morning brought something far different. A distant rumble, hooves. Many hooves. The cowboy looked up, blinking against the golden light. Down the slope rode the chief on a massive copper-coated stallion, and behind him stretched a line of riders leading horses. Stallions and mares of breathtaking strength and beauty. 50 of them. The chief dismounted and approached. A man who gives everything, he said, deserves more in return than he lost. The cowboy tried to decline, insisting he needed nothing. But the chief shook his head firmly. To refuse would dishonor them all. A single life, the chief said, is worth more than all the horses in this valley. He stepped aside, revealing the herd. 50 thoroughbreds shimmered in the morning light. To receive one would have been remarkable. To receive 50 was a declaration, a bond, deep and eternal. The cowboy stood speechless as the chief and his warriors guided him among the animals, teaching him their names, their signals, their temperaments. As the hours passed, a quiet camaraderie grew between Cowboy and Apache, a bridge where once there had been only distance. That afternoon, Nalin awoke. Though weak, she sat upright and requested to meet the man who had saved her. When she thanked him, her voice held a depth beyond her years, a strength carved by pain but softened by gratitude. She remembered fragments, the ambush, the desperate ride, her horse collapsing, and the feeling of being lifted by steady, gentle hands. Her calm presence washed away the cowboy's lingering worry that she might fear him. That evening, the chief held a feast in the cowboy's honor. A rarity extended only to those whose bravery changed the course of a tribe. Elders spoke of men who had altered the fate of nations with a single act of humanity. They placed the cowboy among them, not to flatter him but because they believed it truly. Songs rose into the night air. Food passed from hand to hand. Laughter warmed the edges of the gathering. For the first time in years, the cowboy felt a sense of belonging that reached deeper than the lonely echo of his ranch. Nalin joined him for part of the night, explaining the symbols sewn into her garments, the meaning behind the drumbeats, and the stories woven into the flames of the fire. Her presence was quiet but strong, and the cowboy felt, as he had felt when he first heard her name, that fate had stitched their paths together for a purpose he could not yet see. The next morning, the chief gave him final instructions. The horses were now his responsibility, but the tribe's friendship was his as well. Their land was open to him always, not as an outsider, but as a trusted ally. Before he left, Nalin approached, offering a small braided charm of red thread and carved beads. It symbolized protection for travelers embarking on important journeys. He tied it to his saddle. As he rode away, leading the incredible herd, he looked back to see Nalin and the chief standing atop a ridge, watching him. No words were needed. The connection forged between them was understood without sound. A bond carried by the wind. When he reached his ranch, neighbors came from miles around, stunned by the sight of 50 meticulously trained thoroughbreds. They asked questions, disbelieved parts of his story, marveled at others. Yet every time he told it, he spoke plainly, giving credit to the chief and his people. And slowly, something shifted. Old assumptions wavered. Curiosity replaced fear. Weeks passed. The cowboy trained each horse, discovering their unique temperaments. His ranch flourished. But his thoughts drifted often to Nalin and her people. He did not have to wonder for long. One afternoon, as the sun stretched long shadows across the field, a figure approached on horseback, Nalin, riding with renewed strength and grace, accompanied by 2 warriors. She explained that the chief wished to propose a partnership, trade, cooperation, mutual protection, beginning with the herd he now tended. The cowboy felt warmth spread through him, deeper than gratitude. The story that had begun with a single injured girl and a lone horse was not ending. It was just beginning. And as Nalin met his eyes with a quiet, knowing smile, he understood that some gifts, trust, friendship, destiny, were worth more than all the thoroughbreds in the world.